This is Land of Havilah, this time with the book Zephaniah. It's 3 short chapters. We'll read the entire book and explain as we go. We read from the World English Bible because it's an accurate translation and it's not copyrighted, so we can use it without legal issues. Most English translations take the Hebrew name of God, which is Yahweh, and convert it to Lord in all capital letters. The World English Bible doesn't convert it. It just keeps it as it is in Hebrew. So instead of hearing the word Lord multiple times, you'll be hearing the name Yahweh. Our name, Land of Havilah, comes from Genesis 2:11. It's a place with all the ingredients for abundant life. In the first verse, Zephaniah will tell us his family lineage and where he fits into history. Verse 1. Yahweh's word which came to Zephaniah, the son of Cushi, the son of Gedaliah, the son of Amariah, the son of Hezekiah, in the days of Josiah, the son of Ammon, king of Judah. Comment in verse 1, this book is Yahweh's word that came to Zephaniah in the days of Josiah. He says his great-grandfather was Hezekiah. Probably this is Hezekiah the king. Coincidentally, Josiah the king at the time was also Hezekiah's great-grandson, so Zephaniah was related to the sitting king. Josiah reigned about 630 to 609 B.C., so this prophecy originated in the decade shortly before the Babylonian invasion. Yahweh says, verse 2, I will utterly sweep away everything from the surface of the earth, says Yahweh. I will sweep away man and animal. I will sweep away the birds of the sky, the fish of the sea, and the heaps of rubble with the wicked. I'll cut off man from the surface of the earth, says Yahweh. Comment in verse 2, Yahweh says he'll sweep away everything from the surface of the earth, including in verse 3, man, animals, birds, fish, heaps of rubble, and the wicked. What could this be? We know that within 45 years at most, the Babylonians would destroy Judah and all the surrounding nations. And we know in the Great Tribulation there will be mass death of man and animal. And we know God will eventually destroy the present heavens and earth, 2 Peter 3:10. It's all that the prophecy will apply to every sweeping and deadly judgment. Yahweh says, verse 4, I will stretch out my hand against Judah and against all the inhabitants of Jerusalem. I will cut off the remnant of Baal from this place, the name of the idolatrous and pagan priests, those who worship the army of the sky on the housetops, those who worship and swear by Yahweh and also swear by Malcolm, those who have turned their back from following Yahweh and those who haven't sought Yahweh nor inquired after him. Comment verses 4 to 6 focus on Judah and Jerusalem. Yahweh will stretch out his hand against them. He'll put a stop to idolatry, including of Baal, the army of the sky, and Malcolm. The army of the sky is the sun, moon, and stars. They worship the rising sun in the court of Yahweh's temple. As they bowed, they showed their rear ends to the temple, Ezekiel 8:16. Malcolm was god of the Ammonites, also called Milcom, 1 Kings 11:5. His worship went back at least 300 years in Judah, 1 Kings 11:5. In verse 6, they've turned their back from following Yahweh, don't seek him, and don't inquire of him. Verse 7. Be silent at the presence of the Lord Yahweh, for the day of Yahweh is at hand. For Yahweh has prepared a sacrifice. He has consecrated his guests. It will happen in the day of Yahweh's sacrifice that I will punish the princes, the king's sons, and all those who are clothed with foreign clothing. In that day I'll punish all those who leap over the threshold, who fill their master's house with violence and deceit. Comment in verse 7, be silent in the presence of Yahweh. The implication is that something fearful is about to take place, something of Yahweh's doing. In verse 7, Yahweh has prepared a sacrifice. He's going to kill some people. He has consecrated his guests. The guests will be invited to look on or maybe even to partake of the sacrifice and will not themselves be sacrificed. It's a time of the good putting a stop to evil, by Yahweh putting a stop to it, and by those who side with him. In verses 8 and 9, Yahweh has some particular people in his crosshairs, the king's sons, all those who are clothed with foreign clothing, and all those who leap over the threshold. They have it in common that they fill their master's house with violence and deceit. Yahweh is their master, or should rightfully be their master, but they fill his house with violence and deceit. The king's sons are Josiah's sons. Josiah was wonderfully faithful, but his sons were not. Jehoiakim was one. He eventually became king and was dragged out of the city, taken captive by the king of Babylon, and received a burial fit for a donkey, 2 Chronicles 36, 5-8, and Jeremiah 22, 18 and 19. Shallum was another of Josiah's sons. He also became king. Pharaoh took him captive to Egypt, and he died there, 2 Kings 23, 24. Zedekiah was another of Josiah's sons and became king. Nebuchadnezzar put his eyes out, carried him in chains to Babylon, and kept him in prison until the day of his death, Jeremiah 52:11. So it was entirely accurate in verse 8 that Yahweh would punish the princes, the king's sons. In verse 8, all those in foreign clothing must refer to those in Judah who adopted foreign culture and forsook Yahweh. Those who leap over the threshold refers to the worship of Dagon, god of the Philistines. In 1 Samuel chapter 5, the priest of Dagon didn't step on the threshold of Dagon's temple. This was because the statue of Dagon fell, and the threshold cut off Dagon's head and feet. Yahweh will punish those who leap over the threshold. They do so to respect Dagon or to avoid offending Dagon's worshippers. These are just some examples of those who fill Yahweh's house with violence and deceit. He'll punish them in the devastation to come when he sweeps away everything from the surface of the earth. We're still keeping in mind throughout the book that the sweeping away is the Babylonian invasion, the Great Tribulation, the destructive end of the present heavens and earth, and all the above. Verse 10. In that day, says Yahweh, there will be the noise of a cry from the fish gate, a wailing from the second quarter, and a great crashing from the hills. Wail, you inhabitants of Maktesh, for all the people of Canaan are undone. All those who are loaded with silver are cut off. It will happen at that time that I'll search Jerusalem with lamps, and I'll punish the men who are settled on their dregs, who say in their heart, Yahweh will not do good, neither will he do evil. Their wealth will become a plunder, and their houses a desolation. Yes, they will build houses, but won't inhabit them. They will plant vineyards, but won't drink their wine. Comment in verse 10, in that day there will be a cry from the fish gate, a wailing from the second quarter. The fish gate was on the north side. The second quarter was a newer section of the city associated with it. Maktesh in the next verse means mortar, as in pavement, or it means hollow or market district. To consolidate all those ideas, maybe it was an open paved area that served as an outdoor market. This theory is bolstered in the same verse by them being loaded with silver there. There's the general idea of the second district being a rich neighborhood. There'll be the noise of a cry and wailing in this privileged section when Yahweh sweeps away everything, including them. There'll be a crashing from the hills in verse 10, which reminds us of the Babylonian troops crashing in on them, or any destruction that comes through the Judean hills. In verse 12, Yahweh will search Jerusalem with lamps to punish men who are settled on their dregs. They're satisfied with their ways. They say in their heart, Yahweh will neither do good nor evil. They don't fear Yahweh. In verse 13, Yahweh will plunder their wealth. They build houses, but will not live in them, and plant vineyards, but will not eat from them. They labor in vain. Coming up, Yahweh calls it the great day of Yahweh. Other translations call it the great day of the Lord. It's usually described as a dark and terrible day of judgment, such as the Babylonian invasion, the Great Tribulation, or the day of Jesus' return in power and glory. It's a day that the Lord comes to render sweeping judgment. It'll be dark and frightening, but it'll usher in better things. Verse 14. The great day of Yahweh is near. It's near and hurries greatly, the voice of the day of Yahweh. The mighty man cries there bitterly. That day is a day of wrath, a day of distress and anguish, a day of trouble and ruin, a day of darkness and gloom, a day of clouds and blackness, a day of the trumpet and alarm against the fortified cities and against the high battlements. I will bring distress on men that they will walk like blind men because they have sinned against Yahweh, and their blood will be poured out like dust, and their flesh like dung. Neither their silver nor their gold will be able to deliver them in the day of Yahweh's wrath, but the whole land will be devoured by the fire of his jealousy, for he'll make an end, yes, a terrible end, of all those who dwell in the land. Comment verses 14 to 18 are in general terms that are applicable to any time of sweeping judgment. In verses 14 and 18, no one will escape on the basis of their might. They won't be able to fight their way out of Yahweh's judgment. Or on the basis of their wealth, they won't be able to buy their way out of Yahweh's judgment. His judgment will be discriminatory. Though he sweeps away everything from the surface of the earth, he'll save his own. We can't say what happened to Zephaniah, particularly when the Babylonians came through. We don't know if he lived long enough to see it. But God specifically protected others from death and captivity in that invasion, such as Jeremiah and his servant Baruch, and a eunuch of the court named Abimelech, and all who sighed and moaned at the abominations done in the land. Jeremiah 1:8, 15:21, 39:11-14, and Ezekiel 9, verses 4 and 5. And Yahweh specifically searched out others for destruction, as verse 12 of this chapter said. But there's the implication that judgment will apply to most people. In verse 18, Yahweh will make a terrible end of all those who dwell in the land. It sounds pretty universal that most people will have a terrible end. From the way the Babylonian invasion played out in Old Testament history, we know either death or captivity applied to almost everyone. And Jesus said, "How narrow is the gate and restricted is the way that leads to life. Few are those who find it." And by contrast, he said, "The gate is wide and broad is the way that leads to destruction, and many are those who enter in by it." Matthew 7, verses 13 and 14. So fear the Lord is the bottom line. Turn toward him, seek him, and inquire of him, as verse 6 said, and don't take your cues from the world around you. Zephaniah 2 is next.